All right, good evening. We're going to go ahead and call to order the workshop session. First item on the workshop agenda is discussion regarding Lampasas Central Appraisal District fiscal year 2020-2021 budget.
Good afternoon.
Please be sure you're speaking directly into the microphone for the
Can you hear
recording.
me now?
No.
Is it on? Do you want me to take this off? Okay. If y'all don't mind, I'll just take off my mask. So I wanted to come tonight just to see if y'all had any questions on our proposed budget or our adopted budget for 2021. On any line items or any questions anyone would have.
I do have some questions on the two $2,000 figures that are listed for the no new revenue rate website and the
Okay.
mailing postcard no new revenue.
Okay, so for 2021, there's been some new law changes. There will be an additional mailing in August. We will have to send to all property owners after the effective tax rate calculations are made. That will begin in 2021 for our size county. Also, there is an additional website the appraisal district will have to supply to the public that has information about the effective tax rate calculations, which we currently, this time of the year is when we are working on them, that have to be provided to the public.
A whole new web page or a
It's a whole new web page, yes. But our software vendor is going to provide that. They're going to try to provide it to all of their customers for no charge. But they don't know if they're going to be able to do that yet. It's going to depend on the language and how this law was interpreted. So they estimated $2,000 as our charge if they're not going to be able to provide it to us for free
the total charge is $2,000?
per year.
Okay, so, but the city's being billed for the whole 2,000?
No,
No.
that's just our
Okay,
budget.
okay.
Yes, that's just our total budget.
Okay.
Yes. No, your percentage of the total budget, if you will go to the cost, the collections cost of operations, you'll see Lampasas City is 5.72 of our total collection. And for our appraisal, Lampasas City is 6.01%.
Okay.
So that's your percentage of each of those line items that you would be paying for.
Okay. And the only other question I had was regarding the line item for telephone. It's got a 25% increase for telephone.
We are going to be updating our email access, okay? We are getting a new updated, and I don't know the specifics of exactly what we are getting, but anyway, that's proposed in this budget. We're going to increase our speed of the internet, and that is on our, and we're including that in our telephone line item.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Does anyone else have any questions for Melissa while she's here?
I have one. Would you elaborate on your salary increases?
We went with just a straight 1.5% cost of living this year due to the fact that we felt like a lot of the entities would be having issues with their budgets with COVID. So that's what the increase was this year.
Okay, thank you.
I was wondering when you expect to know what the effective tax rate's going to be.
You were wondering when we'll have that calculation done?
Right.
I just got it to Yvonne this afternoon. Also, there were so many law changes last year with the effective tax rate calculations. Our software is just now getting those worksheets updated. The comptroller did not get them out till a couple of weeks ago. But I did get her the worksheet this afternoon, and we'll be working closely on it. There are a lot of changes this year.
Thanks.
But while I was here, I did want to let y'all know that we have been working on our mapping. We updated last year, and we're currently on version 10.71 ArcMaps, Esri GIS. Since February 2020, we have updated 1,000 changes in our mapping system. We are striving to try to get all current updates and along with cleanup on parcels mapped. The webmaster, which is our online access, was updated on July the 24th, and we are attempting to update that at least every 60 days so the public can see all of our mapping changes as close as possible to when they're done. We are currently mapped at 94.82%. So always when you use our mapping, there is going to be about 5% of parcels that aren't updated on our mapping system. So, and if anybody had any questions on that.
Anyone? Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome, thank you.
Next item on the workshop agenda is discussions and updates regarding COVID-19.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to give you a few quick numbers since the last time that we've met, discussed any of this. I do have some positive news to report statewide and even in the county of Lampasas. Overall, we have 385,923 total cases. Of that, 146,836 are active cases. We do unfortunately have 5,713 fatalities statewide. The good news is the positivity rate is trending down at this time. When we last met, we were at 16.85%. Now we're at 13.22%. And it has been coming down since we last met. It's been on a steady trend coming down. Hospitalized statewide, we have 9,781. July 13th, we had 10,405. As far as Lampasas County, we have 148 total cases. 39 are active, 3 are hospitalized, we have 2 on a ventilator, and we have had 1 fatality since we last met. So
That puts us with 108 recovered.
I do not have the number recovered, and I don't want to try to do math on this.
I did it on my phone, so that's okay.
Okay. But yes, I've been getting the same information from Dr. Hay that you've been getting, and I do enjoy the format with which we're getting that now very much. So I appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying it too.
Yes.
Anybody have any other questions about this?
Chief, is there still a significant backlog on the testing? I
A
understand
significant
from
amount of
people-
backlog, yes. If you look on the website right now, you would not even see the 1 fatality that's been posted as far as for the
Well, I
county.
meant on the people that have the test done,
Yes, but it's lacking probably,
2 to 3 weeks? Is that
I don't know
right?
that I'd go 3 weeks, but I feel comfortable saying that it's 1 week to 2 weeks, yes. And that's what we've been told as far as some city employees that we've had for testing, awaiting results, whether it be positive or negative. Those are actually come in quite a bit late into that.
So Chief Smith referred to, we get an update daily from Dr. Hay, our local county health authority. That's the information that I share publicly every evening on Facebook. Those numbers are as relevant and current as we can get. What you see on the state website is not going to be current, unfortunately. And so the discrepancy between the two, I'm going to always encourage you to utilize the numbers provided by our actual local authority.
Yes, I'd very much encourage that. She's actually getting those numbers to her each day. They're not being pushed to the state and the Health Human Services the same manner that they're being pushed to her. So we feel like as far as that goes, we feel like we're also a good 10 days ahead on that.
Anything else? Thank
All
you.
right, thank
Thanks,
y'all.
sir. Item number 4, discussion and updates regarding fiscal year 2021 budget.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Wanted to just continue on with our discussion that we had at our last meeting. We jumped pretty deep into our year-end projections and told you about some of the things that we were going to continue to look at in terms of those projections as we built our 2021 budget. I'm pleased with where we are. I think we've tried to send you out some information over the weekend in terms of where the numbers were falling out. The other thing that I think, even though we had a very strange budget season, budget cycle, I almost preferred the way certain things lined up. About a month or 6 weeks ago, we took a look at our audit, followed by the CIP report, followed by year-end projections. Previously, we would have taken a look at our audit, January, February, and we would have forgotten about what that audit said and so this, actually the timing, I think, works out well in terms of a flow. I do want to send credit to staff and Yvonne. All of our staff took this task very seriously. They understand the responsibility that they have in terms of providing you with good, sound numbers with residents in mind. So this may be a little bit tedious to follow, but certainly would want you to stop me at any time with questions or comments or any input you have. So where we left off and where we're going, like I said, the audit and the CIP, I think kind of pushing them a little closer to this process made them more relevant and provided you the background I think that's important as we build our budget. We talked about last meeting the city's financial health and the performance over the past several years. It's provided us, with capital funding. It's allowed us to obviously balance our budgets, and it's obviously allowed us opportunities to increase our fund balance. We do have a lot of needs, and as you heard last time with the CIP, we have 82 projects that we've programmed through CIP, not to mention fleet and major maintenance. But I think the other message that we will give you throughout this presentation is you are in such good shape that in the event you wanted to do more, you could. As far as tonight, we want to review the year-end projections. We went back at it, beat those projections up again. We want to talk about the use of our year-end surplus and kind of what your appetite is for that. Take a look at initial budget projections for 2021. Talk a little bit about what's in them and what's not in them. And then, again, try to solicit your input on next steps. The other thing that I'll say maybe more than once is that when we put a budget together, we base that off of our feeling from council, what you've either expressed to us as a group, as individuals, and so we take our assumptions based on the input that we receive from you or what we think. If we've missed the mark, in other words, if this budget doesn't fall into line with what you're thinking, we'd like your input on it. So we've made assumptions in packaging this budget, but we don't want to be presumptuous. Year-end projections, so it's obviously the foundation for our start for the 21 budget. Accelerated purchases is something that we've been able to take advantage of just kind of year in, year out, and it's also allowed us to increase our fund balance. Our initial kind of second and third and fourth go at our year-end projections indicate that we have a surplus of approximately $1.7 million for FY20, and that includes accelerated purchases that we'd ask you to consider or ask you to indicate your acceptance of in terms of that concept. So we had about $192,000 worth of accelerated purchases that are incorporated in that $1.7 million surplus. In terms of where these modifications came from between last meeting and this meeting, and I alluded to them a little bit at the previous meeting, but we had fund transfers where we had the full amount expensed when we didn't need the full amount expensed in terms of a transfer, as well as we did not have any revenue that was budgeted. So we'll go into that detail in one of the other slides. The other thing too, Fortunately, you know, we had a reduction in program revenue, so program revenue as well as program expense, parks, pools. In terms of salaries, we receive a fair amount of savings, as we'll point out more specifically in a slide or two, where we've actually, the Public Works Director and the Assistant City Manager are now combined as one, plus vacancies. And then, obviously, what we alluded to last time, the performance in our utility funds was very positive. In terms of how it played out, and all these slides, the spreadsheet slides are on a full sheet of paper behind your presentation in your packet. So if you don't want to look at the small lettering on this page, you've got a page in the back of your packet with this on it. So our year-end projection, actually, we actually reduced our year-end projection after our last meeting. I think the previous meeting was 1.07. We came back and played with it, and it's more like 1.37. And I'm just going to go line by line down this. When we talk about streets, our Avenue E project is actually going to be carried out over 2 budget cycles. So we feel like we're going to spend, of that $700,000 that we fully budgeted or fully projected to spend by the end of the year, we'll only spend about $250 of that thousand, which would make a surplus grow $450,000. The other items there, the extrication equipment, the vehicles, those are accelerated purchase that we, like I said, we've incorporated into that 1.7. In Fund 81, the bottom 2 rows of numbers, that's where we budgeted a full expense as a projected year end, but actually we only need $245,000. At the same time, we did not budget any revenue, so it was just an expense without any support. The original FY20 budget was $480,000. We weren't going to bring anything in, but now we're going to bring the $245,000, which again props that budget number up. So this is not a lot of terribly in-depth. These were just the major areas that caused that that year-end projection to go from a little over $1 million to about 1.7. So the impact of the FY21 budget, or year-end projection on the FY21 budget, starting on the right-hand side, is that you'll be able to fund projects without the use of existing fund balance. And we'll talk a little bit about the condition of your existing fund balance in a minute. It also allows you to maintain a surplus to increase your fund balance. It allows you to consider if you'd like to fund additional projects or have other priorities that you want to make sure are funded. And what we're looking at right now in terms of a year-end projection after the 2021 inclusions, if council so chooses to take this path, would be about a $645,000 surplus. Would still allow us to complete West Avenue E. That is obviously contracted and ready to go. We think we have sufficient funds to complete East 3rd Street, Key to Western. That's a project that's kind of the next big paving project for FY21. It would allow you to fund public safety communications. We do anticipate part of that funding to come from grants, and allows you to do fleet purchases as well as some facility improvements that we'll talk about. In terms of getting that 1.7 down to 645, again, we want to use some of that 1.7 surplus as fund balance next year to bring that $450,000 back to streets, which will fund the completion of West Avenue E that is unused from FY20. It'll allow us to do public safety communications, again, from fund balance that is part of that 1.7 million surplus that we had this year. And then we're also looking at about $169,000 in use of that surplus to fund various capital projects, including cemetery pole barn, police department building upgrades, CAD, Cardinal system, electric, street, shop, bathrooms. We wanted to make some upgrades there.
Finley, what is a cardinal system? I should know, but I don't.
That would be part of the communications and CAD system, is that?
Okay, I just had not heard that word, but yeah, gotcha.
Just curious, since we're talking about street fund balance and all that stuff, remember we had made an agreement with Mike Halen about that Chestnut Street? and the
Yes.
improvements that were made? Do you remember how much that cost? Because could we use fund balance for that versus put it in next year's budget?
Ms. Keeney, can you please be sure you're talking into your mic? They're not picking you up on the recording.
It's on.
Yes. In fact, the very last slide, I've got a notation in there. Basically, to answer your question, it would be my recommendation or staff's recommendation. Let's go ahead and take care of that, particularly in the position we're in. So, building the budgets, and again, these are the assumptions that we've made. Is that there's no increase in tax rate. So the city's had the same tax rate now for, I don't even know how many years. 2008. So the 39 cents would remain the same. There would be no increase in utility rates or fees. We would maintain our current staffing levels, maintain our current level of services, and we would be able to address some of the CIP projects as well. In terms of staffing levels, that's not to say that there aren't some needs that we have, whether that's administrative between utility billing collection and FD, or we may also take the opportunity to look at elevating the level of certain positions based on their current job duties. So when I say level of, same level of staffing, that's the same number of people, but I think we want to continue to look at positions and look at the responsibilities of those positions. And frankly, if we have a need, and we may come back to you at the next meeting and say, hey, we really need a part-time person here and a part-time person here. But at this point, the assumption is, in these numbers, is that those levels will remain the same.
Finley?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that you foresee that we would use in developing the business part in this next year's budget, like professional services?
I don't believe of professional services, but it would be a project or a priority that was expressed by CIP. And yes, I mean, it could be, although we are, at this point, we'd like to see what we can reap in terms of the EDA grant funding.
Okay.
If that
I didn't know if
happens-
we was going to do some kind of reserve or how you were going to
Correct.
set up future funds.
And certainly, you know, I think the variance that we were looking at the time was about 350 to 400,000. Is that right, Mandy? Between what the opinion of probable cost was versus the EDC's level of funding, and then what the city would have to come make up the difference was on the order of 350 to 400,000. But again, we're hopeful that grant funding will pick that up.
And in your, are we still relying on our fleet maintenance, our replacement that we do with PD and FD and so on?
Yes. So that would be inclusive of this budget. So the ones that were on the CIP fleet forecast, those are the ones that have been identified for replacement in this coming budget year.
Thank you.
You bet. And again, I don't want to take you down a rabbit hole if we don't need to, but just in terms of how the budget has been built, if you look at the far right-hand column at the very bottom, we're sitting right now at the budget, FY budget proposed of about a $217,000 surplus. How we got there, basically, we were $450,000 deficit. We looked at, our starting point was right there where it says preliminary FY21 budget. That was kind of our starting point. If we were able to push it into 20, it's on the left side of that. And if we were able to, if we had to make an adjustment for FY21, we pushed it into the other column. But a couple of things we did, the communications equipment is new in FY21. We also increased the paving budget, $450,000, and again, that's just the carryover from the West Avenue E project. Electric sales cost, some of that was adjusted slightly. Retained earnings is, that would be a revenue into electric that we would then transfer to general for the communications equipment. We did hold off on you see two expenditures of $33,000. We did hold off on a vac truck. That would have represented a lease payment for a new vac truck. And then the items, and we did cut our meters down $100,000. The $150,000 represents what we've historically funded for meters in the wastewater department.
Will that complete that program?
That will not complete it, no. Nor would the 250. How many more do we have, Dan? We'd have had about 1,000 left over if we'd done the 1,500. Okay.
And so you reduce that because?
We reduced, we were looking at what we had historically done, but we could increase that if council wanted to.
The last ones were done by contract, correct?
Correct. The last two cycles, I think we've done with contractors. Been very effective.
How much more do we have to be finished with the electric meters?
All the meters, about 2,500. So we've only put in 500? We have 3,500 meters. We started with 5 and
We did another.
First with the 5 with us.
Okay.
Well, my reasoning for not cutting it would be that tends to increase revenues.
Yes. And I'm sorry to give you two spreadsheets in a row, but here's the roll-up. So this is all of our operating funds by major account. See the overall budget, $29,821,000. We do have, at this time, about a $217,000 surplus. We anticipate about a $1.7 million projected year end. You can go ahead.
I'm sorry, Finley, do any of these numbers represent an increase in salary compensation of any sort?
They do not, but certainly it'd be one of the items on my recommendations is to utilize that for compensation. And you can see 18 and 19. Again, the numbers are a little bit different in 18 and 19 because some of our capital expenditure gets turned into depreciation, which you'll note in account 5600. You can see huge numbers there, but typically they just about offset. Is that accurate? So I think this does, again, validate the picture we're painting of we've done well for the last several years. In terms of just quick notes on the numbers that I flashed to you, your operating budget is about a 9.7% increase over year-end projection, about a 1.3% increase over FY20, so a slight increase in your overall budget. Your salary and benefits are about 28% of the budget. Salary expense is about, the year-end projections, you're going to be about $370,000 better than planned. And the FY21 proposed is about $53,000 less than FY20 budget. We have been able to save about $70,000 on health insurance. This isn't related to the previous spreadsheets, but I just wanted to plug this in somewhere on my presentation, which is the Fund 68, which is your 2016 CO. You still have that money there that you can use if you have a compelling need related to water, wastewater, a capital need. So there is a reasonable amount of money in Fund 68. Fund 40 is your hotel occupancy tax, which you'll see in the next slide. Staff would make recommendations in terms of use of some of that fund. You've got about 1.4 million there. And then also just, again, to take a look back not more than 6 weeks or so on our audit report, you know, we have about 5.2 months worth of reserve in our utility funds. But the other thing that it does not include is there's about 1.9 million that is restricted to O&M, which, you know, you can put a label on it, you could designate it undesignated, but if for some reason we needed emergency funds, just because it's restricted to O&M, I think is still a allowable use of those funds for those. But anyway, so you've got some other resources. In terms of what's in it and what's not in it, and this is obviously not an all extensive list, but we've got about $150,000 for meter replacements. It sounds like council may want to provide some input to increasing that. Tree trimming, public safety communications, fleet replacements, some slight facility upgrades that we mentioned. We do have increased bandwidth. Exclusions, Sulphur Creek retaining walls, which I know has been on the list for quite a while. Replacement vac truck or sweeper. Replacement fire apparatus. Undefined pre-treatment improvements, and I think we will actually have a meeting on that August 5th. And there are a lot of unknowns. That could be a big number, but we also need to understand that that will also be subject of negotiation with Ajinomoto Windsor in terms of what improvements are defined and to what scale, what scope. So, you know, if they come back with a $10 million project, then, we've got to do something different. We've got to, they have to borrow money. They have to do something they have to provide us with compliant effluent. But if it's something that council wishes to consider a shared or a payback type of improvement, we can go from there. Really, we don't know what it's going to look like. And I'm not prepared to say we should put additional money away. I think you're sitting in a very good position as it is. But it's certainly out there. We need to be aware that that is currently being studied, and the result of that study may be a capital project. I almost guarantee it. Business park is not, those numbers are not within this, but council certainly has the resources that you could amend the budget or do that in the event that the EDA funding was not available. And internet was also something that was included as a priority. We kind of feel like our role now has been to let's create the environment for these companies to come in. We've had some private investment locally, and hopefully that's something that corrects itself through the private sector in the next year. So a couple of things that you may want to consider. And you do have an action item on your agenda if you wanted to formalize direction. Certainly we can take your direction through your comments here, but what other council priorities and topics for workshops are there if that's desired? We would like to take a look at use of surplus, use of FY21 surplus of $217,000 for a 3% increase in compensation, approximately $40,000 in salary adjustments. Some of those are market, some of those are based on some additional duties, et cetera. We'd say let's follow the lead of the CIP in terms of the hostess house and utilize hot funding for that, as well as a colored school. We do have Hendricks is going to come out and take a look at the hostess house. as an MEP. Hendricks did work here. They also did work at the wastewater shop and lab. We'd ask that you bless the concept of approving accelerated purchases and use of surplus fund balance. And then, what other uses or priorities that you have for additional capital needs. We'd be interested in hearing that. And then the last one gets to Delena's curb and gutter contractor reimbursements, about $18,000. Let's get that one off the books and take care of that.
A quick question, what is lacking on the colored school?
So it's a ceiling, flooring. If you wanted to do something in terms of a detached restroom, that would be the big ticket item. But the electrical, the HVAC has been done. There's probably some cosmetic work to be done, but it's primarily the ceiling and flooring.
And the purpose of that is to have a community center to use?
Well, I think it could be used either for meetings, for interpretive gatherings, so, right.
The inside space is very small, so, but it would serve as a good meeting spot if there were bathrooms, for sure.
Yeah, I look at it as more of a cultural deal.
Correct.
A cultural deal.
I think, I think this is a good budget. It's a good starting point.
Finley,
Yes.
could I speak to you about the rest of 3rd Street? You're talking, making some improvements from Key down to Western.
Yes.
Any plans to go further than Western all the way down?
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit at the last meeting. We've
Right.
actually shot that grade, and we may want to take a look at particularly the intersection of Live Oak and 3rd, because we think that's where it really gets flat from the alley to Live Oak. I mean, you don't have any fall, and I think a lot of that is where that water's backing up in terms
Okay.
of what we observed and what we shot. But yeah, I think that's something that we would want to take a
So we
look
can
at.
look at that again?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Certainly entertain, or if council would like to entertain a proposal for some design work, we could do that as well.
Did Derek get back with y'all in regards to 3rd Street?
Ricky, have you heard anything?
Did Derek get back with y'all in regards to 3rd Street drainage?
He was supposed to call
He did call me, but he said he would take a look at it briefly and get with you. Okay.
We'll follow up.
Can I ask, I wanted to ask a quick question. You had mentioned the Fund 68, and it was for water and wastewater specifically. How much is, well, first off, would that be a consideration for doing some of the water meters so that we can get those done?
I would not say water meters because that's more of a maintenance item. So this would be a capital item. And it could also be used for parks. Parks, water, wastewater.
So it's parks and water wastewaters out of Fund 68. My other question too was, and I guess this is more for Van, but how are the bug things doing? Like with the, is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? Are we back to where you can get people to be able to dump?
Please hand him the microphone.
No, it's,
We reseeded today, and we reseeded last Wednesday, and the plant did respond well to that. We're not quite ready for septic haulers yet, but what we're going to do is we're going to continue to seed the plant every week until the plant is healthy. We stopped there for a while thinking it was, and that's when it took a nosedive. So we're just going to continue with the seed projects until we see that the numbers are going to be good with the oxygen levels.
In regards to that, one of the items that I had talked to you about is regarding some engineering review of our interceptors
Correct.
to be able to get it to the plant.
Correct. And that's a project that was identified through the CIP, and like I said, we'd be happy to include any projects that council wish to within the budget?
Of course, my big concern is we could all get hit with this stuff and be $10 million needed,
Right.
you know, and that's not going to be available. But I would hope we would do some preliminary, at least in the budget, to be able to know what we're going to be facing for the future.
And there were also a number of other potential studies or engineering studies that were identified within the CIP report as well. So, but certainly we'd be anxious to hear any council input or desire to include that in the budget.
Before council starts offering input on what some things that they'd like to see worked on, I just want to confirm, we're looking at a surplus at the end of this fiscal year of $645,000 net, and right now we're at a budget surplus of $217 for the next year?
Correct.
Okay.
The 645 represents the use of your surplus.
What's left after we accelerate purchases and
Accelerate
roll
purchases as well as what you're,
paving over and,
yeah, what you're basically doing is you're saying, okay, we're going to utilize that even though it turns into fund balance, but we're going to bring it back from fund balance. So the use of your surplus, you still have a net positive about 645,000.
Correct.
The way it is now.
correct.
And then back to that Fund 68, because you also said something about parks, because one of the things that you had mentioned is the retaining walls.
Correct.
And, I mean, do we have numbers on that stuff? Like, if that came out of Fund 68 instead of fund balance, would that make a difference?
I think council could consider them resources that they could use either way. In other words, you could use Fund 68 for that, but you could also use fund balance just because of the health of the city. And like I said, I think this is it's a good budget. It's a good starting point. I think it's good for the residents. You're not raising taxes or tax rates or fees. And it does also maintain resources for what other priorities you identify or for future needs.
Out of that surplus at the end of this fiscal year, I would like to see, or I would like to feel out council on thoughts of earmarking a certain amount, almost as a savings plan towards a new fire engine that we're going to need probably within the next 2 to 3 years. It's going to end up being an incredibly expensive purchase. If we earmark a certain amount to save towards that and build up and be ready for that when that comes. I'd also like to look at putting the vac truck back on. I think we have the funding for that. I think it kind of seemed as though council was still interested in keeping the meters back up to the $250,000 almost in expenses for replacing meters. And maybe it's just me. I mean, I am in support of going ahead and reimbursing the $18,000. I'm interested in seeing the market adjustments on the salary and the cost of living increase. What is council's feelings on with us finishing up the year so strongly with the ability to accelerate and fund a lot of things for the next fiscal year? If we look at utilizing a dollar amount to be determined by council as a rebate to our utility customers. We did some assistance for businesses during COVID. I don't know how significant of a rebate we could offer, but a lot of what we pay for and a lot of the money we use, and we refer to it as our cash cow, is our utility program. I think we can look at maybe doing some sort of a rebate to utility customers. That's just an option for y'all to discuss.
I would be interested in that, but would you be talking a dollar amount across the board, or would you be talking like a percentage? Or I guess that would be
don't
an
have a
Yvonne
recommendation.
question.
It's just something I wanted to see if council even had an interest in
Yeah, I'd like to see
participating
the
in.
numbers on it before I committed to it.
I also hear a lot of complaints about the street sweeper. If we could get that either activated again, or I know a new one is terribly
I
expensive.
can't hear you at all, TJ. You're going to have to.
The street sweeper, I hear a lot of people complaining about not having that working all the time. And I think we've had indications that it's very expensive to repair, so I don't know if we can get it repaired or maybe look into replacing it.
It stays in the shop quite a bit.
Yeah.
So many moving parts, so many, like you said, people like street sweeping.
And I think it's very expensive to replace, but maybe we should think about that.
We've looked at leasing it too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there were about 33,000 a year on the lease for that as well.
A little less.
So I think we should figure that into the budget somehow.
Yeah, I think we need to do something with that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I would like to see the numbers on the retaining wall also, and I would be in support of that coming out of CO funds.
One thing with those retaining walls that concerns me greatly is the amount of sediment that's built up against those dams. And you're gonna be having to remove that to be able to work on some of those even retaining walls while you've got that thing drained. The sediment behind those dams have never been touched since they were built.
Randy, you remember when we used the Gambian,
Can't hear you, Chuck.
when you used the Gambian system down there, we had to have a lot of approvals from a lot of folks because we were messing with the interior of that thing too. You just can't go down there and decide you want to replace X amount of feet of that. It's got to be well thought out.
I think it's doable.
It's doable.
I don't think it's that big a problem. It's a matter of making phone calls and alerting the right.
Remember when we talked about taking the sediment out of there too, we had to treat it as dillo dirt. And it had to be
There will
specially
be
handled.
some of that, but.
I don't know.
If you put some kind of dredging equipment down there to remove that sediment, those walls will cave.
Big subject. I'd like to see us have a special meeting to talk about all this stuff. I mean, this stuff's just flying around and I'm going,
Well,
Okay,
I'm
getting-
also concerned about our, on our wastewater plant and
Sure.
being sure that we're meeting permit and our regulatory compliance issues.
So are we at the phase in our budget process where council would like to hear from departments? Maybe we schedule just a workshop meeting where we have departments come in and visit with us?
I think we've done that in previous years, and it does help, and then that way they can voice what they see on a day-to-day basis.
Agreed.
And I'm just going to go ahead and say, I think that using some of those hot funds to get the hostess house up to code is a great idea.
Agreed.
Agree.
And Finley, I appreciate you bringing something forward on the employee salary increase for us to look at.
Any additional input? Do we give you plenty to start to work on?
I think just to restate a couple of things that staff heard is taking a look back at the vac truck sweeper, increasing the meters, market adjustments for salaries or compensation in general, retaining walls, the concept of a rebate to utility customers, and also want to take a look at a workshop, a department head workshop
And earmarking some funds for Engine 1.
and Engine 1, as well as engineering studies.
you know, Finley, you know
Anything
my
else?
thing about communications, but I'm getting nervous when I still see grants. I have lived through about 4 or 5 years of the CERT activity when I was on it, knowing that
Chuck,
tremendous
you really got to be
tremendous
into it.
lack of communication capability, both externally and internally. I notice on here they've still got grant funding allocated for maybe 800,000 of it. Do we know where we're at on that? I don't see the chief.
It's been
Where'd you go?
secured. So, Sammy step.
Anyway.
It's been secured through the COG.
It has been?
Yes.
Okay. So
The
it's
overall project is about $600,000 to $650,000. Our piece is they're gonna pick up a couple $100,000 of that.
Okay.
And Sammy can give you the precise, unless Chief Smith, do you know off the top of your head? Sammy will give you the precise numbers on that, but that's rough numbers.
If it's okay, I'll meet with her separately, just to find out where we're at,
Yeah, or she can tell council as a whole as well.
whichever.
One more item, if I may. The designated funds sheet, can you give us, or put in our box, or give me some information regarding what the designated fund, what it's designated for in this, so that I have an idea of?
What we'll do is we'll give you a balance sheet for general fund as well as utility funds. One thing that council did do probably 3 or 4 years ago is there were a number of funds that were designated, however, they were inactive or didn't have very much, and so they basically said, we're going to undesignate them. So you still have, when we talk about fund balance, that is inclusive of all those the funds that council actually undesignated, but we'll get you the balance sheets on those.
I think he's
Okay, thank
also
you.
wanting each specific fund can be utilized for. Is that what you're, the ones that are still designated, could he get the explanation as to what those are
Absolutely,
designated
and we
for?
can even do that for Fund 68, which is the CO. But that's a broad range of uses for public works and parks, et cetera.
Does council have any other input to offer towards the budget process? No? Thank you, sir. Item number 5 on the workshop agenda is discussion and presentation regarding advisory board annual renewals and vacancies.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to keep this really brief. Each year I come before y'all and I show y'all exactly which boards need to have their terms either going to be renewed or those that have resigned from various boards. And this just kind of gives y'all an overview of where we are right now. The second page in there, it kind of shows you a breakdown of all of the individual who have their term that'll expire in September. And then it shows you the number of vacancies on each of those boards as well. So you can see that we have about 20 that'll be renewing if they choose to. And then we have 5 total vacancies where we need to find fillers for at one time or another. And then the next page is going to show you all of the absenteeism for various boards as well. And then the next slides are just going to show you the presentation that I've done before. It kind of describes what each board does, and then when they meet, how often they meet, any vacancies, et cetera. My intent is next week to start pushing this out on social media to get some interest for applicants of those who might be interested in, volunteering to be on a board, just in case we have some that choose not to renew, or even just to have extras, just in case we do have some that decide to not renew their term.
Do we reach back out to those whose applications we have on hand and see if they want
Absolutely.
to keep them on file?
Yes, ma'am. And that's how I was able to backfill some on my zoning board and parks as well. Does anybody have any questions or wanted me to do anything different going forward or changes anything up on it?
No, I think this is one of those times where, once again, it'll fall on council. We really need to get the word out and start encouraging people to apply for vacancies, so.
Which we look really good. It's just that it's always helpful to have some applicants on file. And then some people stay on the board because they don't feel like there is a replacement for them. And some might just be ready to, get off certain boards. So it's always helpful.
Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome.
Item number 6, discussion and presentation of the Chamber of Commerce fiscal year 2021 budget.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for having me again tonight. You have all been given my explanation for the 2020-21 budget, along with the budget numbers, and there was a significant $3,000 decrease in what I'm requesting. That's due to various factors, as you will see in the explanation. However, I believe that these numbers, we can keep these numbers the same moving forward on pace, minus the cost of living and any unforeseen expenses that we might see, which they would probably translate into tourism funding and also brochures, and those would come to a separate meeting outside of the budget. Does anybody have any questions about the budget and explanation?
Yes, ma'am. Under your explanation that you said it includes room for a salary increase, has your board approved a COL for you?
So that salary increase was for the administrative assistant. My board recommended a salary increase for myself, but I have chosen not to take that at this time due to COVID.
On general supplies, we show a requested $1,000 increase due to rebranding and renovations to the visitor center. What renovations are we looking at?
So that is basically, that could also fall, I just put it in general supplies, but that could fall under Lampasas promotions and visitor center brochures without a separate request. And that is rebranding of business cards and signage for the building, some other things, banners that we had made with our branding on them for the visitor center.
So no physical renovations to the actual building?
The physical renovations have been paid for out of personal money and then also a donation to the chamber and then also with the chamber's budget.
And then an increase under the building line item for maintenance projects. What maintenance projects are we looking at? And the reason my line of questioning is going this direction is because that asset belongs to the Chamber of Commerce Board. And so if we're going to look at investing any money into maintenance or renovations to someone else's asset, we'd like to see what that is before it's approved.
Yes, and that's understood just like it was for the air conditioner replacement. And the expenses that I requested for that was labor expenses. The other for the building would be just the presentation for the visitor center as a whole. That is a representation of Lampasas and visitors that come to the center. If it's a giant expenditure, that would be something that I would come to council separately. As far as the maintenance is concerned, let me look at that line item, I apologize. So for the building maintenance projects, that would be, you're right. I mean, some of those would have to be determined if it's labor or if it's for maintenance, general maintenance each month, or if it was an actual project where something was put into the building and I'm asking for reimbursement for that. So those, much like the air conditioner, will come to council and be split.
Does council have any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7, discussion regarding any item on the regular agenda. Does anyone wish to discuss any item that we're looking at later tonight? Do I have a motion to adjourn workshop session?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We will take a 10-minute recess. City of Lampasas, if you would all please rise at this time, and Chief Bailey, if you would lead us in invocation.
Please join me in prayer. Father in heaven, as we stand before you today, we ask that you grant us strength, wisdom, and courage for our everyday challenges. Lord, we ask that you bring us together as one. Give us your heart and spirit towards all. And all that offends you, Lord, and all lying, all deceit, and all hate. Root out evil and fill our hearts with joy. Lord, we ask that you grant all people to come to know you, live by you, and follow you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. To the flag.
I don't believe we have any presentations or proclamations this evening, so moving on to public hearings and citizens' comments. Item 1.1, citizens' comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The city council may not deliberate on items presented under this agenda item. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak on an item not included on the agenda? Item 1. Oh, thank you, TJ. For those watching at home, if you wish to call in, the phone number is going to be 512-556-0332. Item 1.2, citizens' comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is included on the agenda may do so at this time. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak on anything that's included on the agenda this evening? Moving on to minutes. 2.1, discussion of possible action concerning approval of minutes of the regular meeting on July 13th, 2020.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Monroe and a second from Mr. Williamson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I abstain, as I was not present. 3.0, consent agenda. 3.1, discussion and possible action regarding the monthly investment report for June 2020. 3.2, discussion and possible action regarding the second reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A, fee schedule of the Code of Ordinances, setting a fee for Chapter 78, Traffic and Vehicle, Section 78 through 214, 78-214 through 78-214.012, and containing a severability clause and an effective date. Discussion and possible action regarding the second reading of an ordinance to consider approval, denial, or approval with modifications, a request to rezone property from single-family residential 20, SF20, to single-family residential 8, SF8. The property is described as 1 acre, abstract number 0419 of the LHW Johnson Survey, commonly known as 1205 South Willis Street, Lampasas, Texas, Lampasas County. And item 3.4, discussion and possible action regarding the second reading of an ordinance to consider approval, denial, or approval with modifications, a request for a specific use permit, SUP, to allow for a permanent makeup tattooing in an area zoned Commercial C. The property is described as 1.89 acres, abstract number 0419, LHW Johnson Survey, commonly known as 301 South Highway 281, Suite D, Lotus Beauty Spa and Salon, Lampasas, Texas, Lampasas County. Does anyone wish to pull any of these items? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Recommend approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. 4.0, boards and department reports. 4.1, this month is Parks and Recreation Monthly Report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Of course, I'm not Chris Iker. He's unable to attend this evening, so here we are to present the Parks Monthly Report. Okay, this will be just a quick look at fiscal year 2019-2020 for the Parks Department. First of all, they have the installation of the new restrooms at Campbell Park. You see in the top left there on your screen, the concrete forms for the walkway and ADA access ramp. Top right is the completed facility with fresh application of hydro mulch. The bottom left is going to be the photo of the delivery and installation of the two-piece facility by Coreworth. And this project began early January and was completed mid-February. Next, they have a photo of Hannah Spring. They've got ongoing improvements around Hannah Spring in partnership with the Heritage Foundation. This is a photo recently after the removal of the old post and wire fence. They replaced the fall zone material in the Brook Park playground. Implementation of tree trimming, removal in specified park areas. This one's actually at above the concession stand at the Gavin Garrett Complex. And this is the most recent project, was completed last Thursday. Installation of new picnic tables, benches, and trash cans at the new library playground area. They installed 8 new picnic tables, 2 of which are ADA accessible, and 3 new trash receptacles with 2 new park-style benches. Replacement of old plastic ladder steps to new stainless steel ladder steps, and new landscaping in all flower beds at Hancock Pool. And the Parks Department is also in process of refurbishing the Pilot's Lounge Airport Terminal. Here they're working on the sheetrock repair and removal of old floor tile and trim. TechStop project improvements at Lampasas Municipal Airport to include lighting upgrades and underground electrical. This top photos are showing installation of various new airfield light fixtures. This project began April 20th and completed June 5th. And down at the bottom, it shows the crack sealing and seal coating of all taxiways and runway at Lampasas Municipal Airport. They also replaced windsock and improvements to electrical vault and replacement of all electrical components inside. Have an Eagle Scout project, the Boy Scout Pole Ferry project. They replaced the treated wood structure on the north and south docks in Brook Park. And another project was the Butterfly Garden in Campbell Park. They have a butterfly-shaped garden that they planted various trees and flowering plants known to attract native insects, mainly butterflies. And Chris noted that JT reports the first monarch sighting happened July 12th. Calendar of events for park areas. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, virtually all events for spring and summer have been canceled or postponed, and we are hopeful that as we move forward, we are able to reschedule some events and resume some sort of normalcy. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, ma'am, I have one. I
Okay.
don't know if you'll be able to answer it, but maybe somebody will, or y'all could get it to us. What's the ETA on the signage for the Hannah Springs? Because because they took down the fencing and stuff.
Okay.
Part of the agreement was some signage about no swimming and that type of
I don't
thing
know if that's
for liability purposes.
We'll probably have to get you an update. I do know that Mandy has been working with Heritage Foundation to go ahead and get those signs in. They're looking, I believe, 3 to 4 signs at various locations that would, what we had talked about when they came to present previously.
Anyone have any more questions for Vicki? Thank you so very much.
Chris, yes.
5.0 routine matters. 5.1 city manager's operational report.
Mayor and Council, just a couple of brief comments. In addition to work that's been initiated on West Avenue E, wanted to also let you know that our street department has also been working on some chip seal projects. Most of these are 1 to 2 blocks at a time, but they are out and trying to get particularly those streets with cuts on them covered up. It doesn't provide the same level up or surface as hot mix, but it does provide a safe and passable surface. They've been on Spring Street, Deb Lynn, College, and Pecan. Prosecutor, I believe we forwarded you 2 applications or 2 letters of interest on that particular item. We had posted that vacancy in the dispatch, and we certainly encourage local firms to submit their qualifications. At this time, we'd like your input. We're prepared to set up a time maybe on a future council agenda, or if you'd like us to maybe knock on the door again and put some notice out one more time to see if we might get a few more people to express some interest.
Is the dispatch the only place we advertise for that position? Not online or not with TML or anything else?
I did run it in the paper twice, and I also sent letters to all the local attorneys in town.
Kempner Water Supply Corporation, again, you've directed staff probably first part of May to finalize and negotiate a wheeling agreement with Kempner. Again, they're going to be using water out of the Georgetown tank for their approximately 22 connections just to the east of the city limits. We had talked to them on and off about, probably some minimal compensation just to cover the costs of our injection sites on a cost per 1,000-gallon basis. They have pulled that agreement twice now over 2 meetings and really not provided us with any input. And then last Wednesday afternoon, we got an email from Kempner that says, well, since we own the line to the Georgetown tank, and we own 37% of the capacity in that line, that we don't have to do a wheeling agreement to begin with. I did go to their meeting Wednesday night after I got that email and let them know that there was no recollection, no agreement, nothing in writing. It was, their position, frankly, was contradictory to the 2001 and 2006 agreement. We did touch base with Helen, because Helen has been here since day one working for us, and Helen had no recollection as well. We did ask them to provide us some documents that would prove that, or prove that, maybe if they've been using our right-of-way, that they'd be paying us franchise fees or something like that. But my response to that open records request was another open records request from us, asking us to prove that they didn't own it. So this is correct, yeah, I just got that this afternoon. Basically, they submitted an open records request to the city that says, provide us documents that we don't own it, that Kempner does not own it. So this is ridiculous.
That's the understatement of the century.
Yeah, and just so council knows, I was very professional when I addressed their board. I said, this is not about huge dollars. This is just about an agreement that's in place. It allows us to meet and confer, allows us to do some modeling when and if necessary in the event that their use increases or our use increases. So, and actually it was recommended by their engineer, who is also our engineer from time to time.
Does the wheeling agreement that you sent them have a maximum capacity daily?
It has a threshold capacity, and so what that threshold indicates is at the point in time that it gets to that threshold, then you meet and confer. Okay. So you sit down and you say, okay, we're now, instead of 300,000 gallons a month, it's 500,000 gallons a month. Let's meet and confer and make sure that if we need to do some additional modeling, if we need to raise the level of water in the tank, if there's anything that we need to do to confer and get expertise on, to protect their customers as well as our customers, that we do that. So
I think that's more than fair.
I think that's
with the absence of a wheeling agreement, what mechanism do we have in place to charge Kempner for the water that they're using out of the tank?
Well, when it comes down to it, Mayor, you have conferred no authority on me to charge them other than what our rates are. So unless you confer for example, that wheeling agreement, you gave me the authority to do that. I don't have, without a wheeling agreement, at least on paper, I don't have the authority to charge them other than a commercial rate or a rebate.
Are we currently charging them a commercial rate?
We have not, but we have indicated that we will.
I think council needs to set a deadline for them to get the wheeling agreement signed, and if not, we bill them at the commercial rate.
I'm in agreement with that.
Give them till the end of this month.
Very good. We've already put them on notice that we don't have any authority to charge them otherwise. But again, if we charge them 9 cents 1,000 based on what their 22, 25, 30 customers use, you're talking about $27 a month. And we're asking them to meet and confer in the event that their usage does go up.
What are we prepared to move if they start arbitrarily using it?
Well, I don't think we're prepared to turn the water off, but that is our water in the tank.
Right.
Will you respond to the ORR, or will Well, we let our legal counsel do that. I mean, they're essentially asking for documents that don't exist, so I don't know what we're
Yeah,
supposed
it's
to
a
provide.
very easy response. There are no responsive documents. But I have also forwarded that to council.
And the 37% that they think they have capacity that's non-existent as well?
We have found no agreement, no documents, no recollection, no comment in the minutes, nothing related to that claim.
That was basically something that was discussed in a mediation that was arrived at somewhat just for a figure.
Yep.
It's not included in any contract or any
Not in any
documents.
contract that I know.
No, it's not in any contract.
And we weren't even aware of that. And like I said, we obviously talked to Helen about it because no recollection whatsoever. Moving on, take a look at the library park. You saw some pictures of it in the park report, but swing by there. It's really, they've really done a great job. It's a great addition for our community and our residents. Just a couple things on staff. We do want to announce that Curtis Wyndham is retiring. Curtis Wyndham can probably outwork a lot of people on our workforce, and we wish him well. He's not going to quit working. He's going to continue to take care of the 2 or 3 cemeteries that he takes care of, and chop cedar and do all those sorts of things. So we wish him well. We're also beginning to do a little outreach in terms of employees, talking to them about recognition programs, events, and the annual barbecue and then the Christmas dinner. We know that those have kind of, the attendance and the excitement about those events have kind of fallen off, and so Becky is kind of reaching out to see what else we might be able to do. And we will certainly share the results with council probably after budget. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Finley. 5.2, mayor's comments. In an effort to not be insensitive to those who've had a different experience, I would like to say that the Talbert household of 3 members are all at 100%, meaning we're recovered and we're all smart alecks and lively and living life exactly like we were just over 2 weeks ago. The outreach of this community was incredible. My husband at one point had to tell me to tell people to stop leaving food on our doorstep. Much appreciated. I don't think that I can express gratitude enough when you feel really bad to know that people care about you. That goes a long way. For those that are curious, I've been sicker, that's for sure. But the worst part of COVID for me was the headache. But when we start talking about Kempner, I realize I've had worse headaches than that too, probably. So moving on to unfinished business, we don't have any. 7.0 new business. 7.1 discussion and possible action regarding the LCAD fiscal year 2021 budget.
I'd make a motion to approve the budget.
This council wishes to second the approval of the budget. We do have the option to disapprove or approve. Did you say that you second that, Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Nay. 7.2, discussion and possible action for accelerated purchase of the 2020 Police Interceptor utility from Silsby Ford and equipment not to exceed $57,000. The agenda actually says a 2000 Police Interceptor, but it is a 2020 if you look at the budget, if you look at the agenda item itself.
Mayor, Council, in keeping with our fleet management program for the 2020-2021 budget, we would like to seek approval for accelerated purchase for a vehicle from Silsby Ford. This is a co-op with the Houston Galveston Area Council of Governments and off a buy board also. Total price is just under $57,000 for the vehicle, and some equipment that we will need for that vehicle. So we're seeking that approval.
Move to
Recommend approval.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Williamson, a second from Mr. Clark. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you, Chief. 7.3, discussion and possible action regarding the accelerated purchase of a 2020 Silverado Crew Custom Pickup Truck from Hoff Power Chevrolet for the street department in an amount not to exceed $30,000.
Yeah, Mayor, Council Mayor, this is a pickup, just a regular pickup, half-ton, four-door for a supervisor truck, so I can move that truck that Carlos drives, utility truck, to the crew, get more tools and equipment on it, and we don't need that kind of truck and it's accelerated purchase. They have the truck here in town.
Do I have a motion from council?
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second in favor.
I
Any
have a
discussion? Go ahead.
question. Is that a 3/4 ton?
No, it's a half-ton. It's just going to be a supervisor truck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
If
it's not a work.
Supervisor, I'm okay with
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
All right, I do currently have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7.4, discussion and possible action regarding the accelerated purchase for the amount not to exceed $55,000 for a new 3/4 ton work truck model pickup with utility bed to replace a 2007 model pickup for the wastewater treatment plant. Van, before you get started, I would like to say that I'm not comfortable with us discussing and approving a purchase on a vehicle that we have not yet located, nor have they given us a price quote on. I know that you've attempted to do that. You've done what you can do, but currently with inventory the way that it is, that vehicle doesn't exist for purchase. And so I don't know that we should be in the business of pre-approving something that we've not even got a quote on or actually located. If you want to explain to council the efforts that you've gone to get that, please do.
Well, we've spent 2 weeks looking for, or we haven't looked for them. Hoff Power Ford and Hoff Power Chevrolet have, and the only two responses I've got were today, that they still can't find a vehicle. They're not out there. The ones that they did find, the dealerships are not willing to agree to a trade or a sell or anything like that. So we're basically waiting for the factories to open back up and actually start producing new vehicles.
And the buy board has nothing?
We have not checked the buy board.
I would.
If you'd like, if this is a necessity, please, by all means, I appreciate the effort to shop local, but
Well, this is in my 2021 budget. This isn't.
we're looking at an accelerated purchase, so. right.
Exactly. And it was requested that we try local, and that's the first step.
Okay.
We have not gone to a Silsbee or online or a large program dealer, so.
I think council is comfortable with the accelerated purchase. I think they'd just like to see the actual quote from the dealer.
Of course, yes, ma'am.
How immediate are you wanting it? I mean, would we?
Well, like I said, this was, not to happen until after October 1. Right. So, I mean, we're not in dire need of a vehicle. We can wait until the normal process.
Here, I'd like to
Can we
move
just
to table
this?
Absolutely.
I'd make a motion to table it.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to table it. Please do bring this back to council once you receive your quotes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you.
All in favor of tabling, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 7.5, discussion and possible action regarding the accelerated purchase of an extrication equipment for the Lampasas Fire Department in the amount of $40,989.92.
Mayor and council, back in January of this past year, we were notified by our maintenance personnel that come from MES that they were no longer able to provide any services to us with the current condition that our equipment was in. It does run at this time. We've used it 3 times this year on different incidents that we've had, but we were notified that they're not going to be able to maintain it any longer. If we had any issues with our pump, if we had any issues with any of the internal components of any of the equipment, they would not be able to make the repairs on it due to the age of the equipment. It's 20 years old. We searched at that time, spoke with several people around throughout the state. The current trends as far as replacing this equipment would be to go with the battery operated. I know that sounds very counterintuitive to what's going on. However, what they use nowadays is a 60-volt battery to operate all this equipment with. The people that I've spoken with have said that the big step in engineering on this is the fact that they were going to battery, and so with the limited battery life, they've actually re-engineered the internal operation of the machine itself, and that's where they're getting all the cutting force from. It's a great opportunity for us to replace this and move in that direction. It does a lot of things for us as far as communications on the scene is much better now that we don't have a gas-powered engine operating with pumps. We don't have to hook up hydraulic hoses. We're also able to use all 4 pieces of equipment at one time versus being able to use 2, disconnect one, hook up another one, or anything like that. When we did look at the price for using something that was similar to what we have, staying with a gas power pump that operates all that, the cost comes down to relatively the same thing because you are buying an extra component with buying that gas operated pump. So if it pleases y'all, if we could go ahead and purchase this time, we would have a set that we could rely on day in and day out, and then in another year or 2, we'll come back and try to replace the second set.
I have a motion from council.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Item 7.6, discussion and possible action concerning the possible modifications to the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget as discussed during workshop.
Mayor and council, I think we took your comments during workshop as direction for us to do some work on the budget. The only question I have for you under this agenda item what about a date for a workshop, a departmental hearing workshop?
I recommend as soon as possible. If that's next Monday, that's fine with me, but we need to wrap this thing up.
Is council available Monday the 3rd for a workshop session regarding budget?
I'm going to be out of town starting Thursday for the next 2 weeks.
I'll be
Oh.
available.
The rest of you, would you be available? In order to keep on our budget timeline, we need to get this scheduled as soon as possible, and I apologize, Mr. Clark, but I think we need to go ahead and set that for next Monday. And if staff could reach out to Mr. White and let him know.
What time? 5:30?
5:30?
I'll forward all the materials to you, Randy.
Thank you.
Item 7.7, discussion and possible action regarding specific local emergency orders related to COVID-19 pandemic.
I don't believe staff has any recommendation at this time.
Moving on to item 7.8, discussion and possible action regarding a request from the Lampasas County Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center for hotel occupancy tax funds in the amount of $1,908.74 for event expenses related to Lampasas Beer Barn LTX Barbecue Fest to be held on September 11th and 12th, 2020, the 580 Sports Complex and Arena.
Council, earlier this year, I came to council to submit my pre-event report for the barbecue, which was originally supposed to take place April 3rd and 4th of 2020. Due to COVID and all of the modifications that we had to make, we then moved that event to May to be in conjunction with the rodeo. Again, it was once again not able to happen, so we then pushed that to September. And it was decided by the board that we would, because of all of the expenses that we were going to incur and also the labor that it would take to host the rodeo, then again postpone that to September 2021 year. However, we are at the point right now where we feel as though we want to thank local government for allowing us to have the 10K race that we just had back in July 11th with the permission of the fire chief and yourself, the mayor. We feel that we were able to pull off a very successful, safe event, kind of setting the standard for a race in a pandemic, as most of them have gone virtual. But we were able to successfully do that, and that really did help our bottom line, along with set the bar for being able to host something of that nature and that grandeur. We also feel in meetings that we've had virtually with the board and the barbecue committee that we are at a point right now where we feel we can successfully do that with modifications as well, and we are asking for permission and it to be granted that we are able to move forward with the planning for that event.
Have you met with them, Chief Smith, on their logistics of their event?
We talked briefly in just a meeting that she and I had the other day, but as far as all the details, we wanted to go through all this, and I'll meet with them and make sure that everything's feasible for the 10K.
If council doesn't know, currently with the governor's order, any event with participation of more than 10 individuals requires local authority to sign off on that. The method that we've put in place is that they apply and notify the city of their event and then meet with Chief Smith, and he reviews all the logistics of their event and their safety protocols that they have in place, and then forwards a recommendation on to me. So that's why I referred to Chief Smith on this one as well.
And we will be happy to do that as well as put together the plan, much like we did for 10K. There would be some serious modifications, as it is a somewhat different template than the 10K race was, but we are assured that we could keep the numbers to a minimum and still be effective in hosting that event. The hot fund request would change for that, and I'm asking that the change be put through to Mandy to have reviewed administratively and decided upon, as it would be lowered based on the original request.
Can I get a motion to approve so that we can open discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the funding, and I'm assuming this is correct, 190874?
That is the approved amount for back in February. Yes, ma'am.
As long as Chief Smith then approves all your paperwork.
So I have a motion
Second.
and a second.
I would ask that we get confirmation from both chiefs prior to the thing so that we know that we're in compliance.
Staff has created a process for approving events. So
Okay, so are we approving this event if we vote for this, we're approving the event without having any knowledge of?
this is approving of the funding for the event. The approval of the event would come from a recommendation from staff and then to me.
Okay, but we don't know, like, here are my concerns.
Sure.
Which I guess isn't even a discussion for now. But, this event traditionally comes with a whole lot of drinking. And, there's a whole lot of, where they have to lock it down after a certain time. How would you handle, would it only be the barbecue cookers themselves and not having the public be able to come in? And those are the type of questions that I would have before I could vote,
Melissa, can you share what your board's discussed as your plans that you plan to present to Chief Smith?
So much like the health precautions that we put into place for 10K, those would mirror as far as doing the event for the barbecue. However, we would significantly decrease our numbers and we would have everybody pre-registered, much like we did for 10K. I understand your concern with the drinking, and that is something that we were going to see for the first time this year, moving it out of Spring Hoe. We don't know if a lot of that was attributed to a variety of the demographic being of the drinking variety, if you will. And then it's also moving to a new location, which, again, comes with its certain sets of challenges. But I can produce I put together like a little council presentation about all the different areas for which we were requesting to host this event. I don't know where it is right now, I apologize. But that would also come with a list of all the different health precautions and safety modifications that we'd put into place.
So would it be just the barbecuers, or would there be crowds coming to sample the barbecue?
So we will have removed the concert element, we will have removed the Taster's Choice element, both of which were public attendance.
So are you I believe what Ms. Keeney's trying to get at is, are we only allowing participants in the actual cook-off to be in attendance at the event? This is not open to the general public?
Correct, registered participation. Yes, ma'am.
Is that what you were trying to find? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And we can set that also at a number that we're comfortable with as well, much like we did with 10K, so we can keep it and manage it under those certain expectations. You have a question?
Any additional questions from council? We currently have a motion and a second to approve the funding for the hot funding for this event at 1908.74, with Ms. Unger expecting that to come in lower. Any additional questions?
It's
Motion is-
funding only, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7.9, discussion of possible action regarding Lampasas County Chamber of Commerce fiscal year 2020-2021 budget.
Just to expand a little bit more on the question that you had earlier in regards to modifications and rebranding, we are very well aware that this is an unusual year, so we have taken this time, much of which I've done personally with funding and also labor, to cut down on the cost for the improvements that we've been making. And I just encourage everyone here to come by the Visitor Center if they have not seen it in a while, because it does look a little differently. As we are finding funding and getting donations and finding ways to supplement funds, we are slowly rebranding. So it's not something that we've come in and done all at once. And we are actually trying to move around funds so we can make it through the fiscal year based on the events that we are able to host, and then streamline some things. The website was a huge expense for us last year, but it gave us a really great platform to be able to appeal to visitors and members alike. So we are actually really steering towards a lot more digital branding and remarketing, or rebranding and marketing. So we're hoping that by doing that and then doing some things in-house with envelopes and letterhead and labels and things of that nature, that we can kind of cut down on some of those expenses that were extraneous in the past.
Do you have a motion from council?
Make a motion to approve their budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous.
Come by and see us, guys.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks.
Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second?
I have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you very much.